From overconfident swimmers to tortured souls seeking fame and meaning, here are the 7 worst deaths in Niagara history. Number 1. George Stathakis. Among Niagara's many stories, few are as tragic, mysterious and heart-wrenching as that of George Stathakis, a man whose dream of fame and fortune ended in one of the most harrowing deaths in Niagara's history. It was July 5th, 1930, and the summer sun gleamed brightly over the churning waters of the Niagara River. George Stathakis, a 46-year-old chef and Greek immigrant, stood at the edge of the river, gazing at the thunderous cascade of Horseshoe Falls. Stathakis was no thrill-seeker by nature. He was a dreamer. As a man with aspirations beyond the kitchen, he sought to make a name for himself and immortalise his story in the annals of history. Sounds harmless enough, but something went terribly wrong. First mistake? He chose Niagara Falls as his stage. George had devised a plan, a bold, audacious act that would cement his name among daredevils and visionaries. He would go over the falls in a barrel, a feat he knew others had attempted with mixed results. But George was meticulous. He had spent months designing his barrel, a hulking 2,000-pound wooden and steel contraption that he believed was impenetrable. His barrel was outfitted with padding, air vents and enough provisions to survive the perilous journey. He was confident. Too confident. As the barrel was hauled onto a boat, onlookers gathered along the shoreline. The atmosphere was electric, with a mix of anticipation and unease. Stathakis, dressed in a simple suit, climbed into the barrel with the calm demeanour of a man who believed destiny was on his side. He wasn't alone. With him was his pet turtle, Sonny Boy, a quiet companion he considered a good luck charm. The turtle, Stathakis jokes, could live for over a century, a testament to survival itself. With a wave to the crowd, the barrel was released into the river. The current seized it, pulling it toward the precipice. The onlookers held their breath as the monstrous falls instantly consumed the barrel, hurling it into the abyss below. Could he actually do this? Time seemed to freeze. The thunder of the water drowned out the murmurs of the crowd as they waited for the barrel to reappear downstream. Finally it did. The massive barrel bobbed to the surface near the Maid of the Mist pool, battered but intact. Cheers erupted from the crowd, their relief palpable. The daredevil had surely survived. Stathakis' calculations and craftsmanship had seemingly withstood nature's fury. Rescuers quickly rowed out to retrieve the barrel, but as they pried it open, their jubilation soon turned to horror. Inside, George Stathakis was lifeless. The details of what happened in the barrel during its plunge remained shrouded in mystery, but the aftermath told a chilling tale. The thing is, Stathakis had survived the initial descent, a testament to the barrel's design. However, the barrel had become trapped behind the falls, lodged in a whirlpool for over 20 hours. Air vents that were meant to provide oxygen had been blocked by the turbulent water, leaving George to suffocate in the darkness. Sonny Boy the turtle miraculously survived the fatal trip. Many have since viewed this attempt as a reckless and senseless gamble with life. But wait till you learn about this next story of a daredevil who paddled into eternity. Number 2. Jesse Sharp. The rapids of the Niagara River roared like an untamed beast on June 5th, 1990. Standing on the riverbank, Jesse Sharp, a 28-year-old professional stuntman, surveyed the tumultuous water. For years, he had been a man in pursuit of glory, seeking challenges most would never dare dream of. That day, he made up his mind to attempt something no one else had survived, kayaking over the thundering Horseshoe Falls without a barrel or protective device. His confidence was as unyielding as the river's current. "I'll do it and I'll walk away," he told his friends. Sharp wasn't merely chasing adrenaline, he was chasing fame. He envisioned himself on talk shows, his name etched in the annals of daredevil history. The stakes were impossibly high, but as you can see, the river would prove unforgiving. Jesse's preparation for the stunt was meticulous. His kayak was a 12-foot fiberglass vessel, sleek and fast, but unreinforced by the crushing force of the falls. He chose not to wear a helmet, simply because he didn't want anything to obscure his face in the photographs he imagined being plastered across newspapers worldwide. He didn't carry a life jacket either. Jesse believed that survival depended on agility and control, not buoyancy. As he slid the kayak into the river that day, a crowd gathered on the shore, their murmurs tinged with a mix of awe and dread. Jesse smiled, raised a hand in acknowledgement, and paddled out into the swirling current. His every stroke brought him closer to the edge, closer to the roar that swallowed all other sounds. The river was relentless. The rapids tossed Jesse's kayak like a toy, but he manoeuvred with the skill of a man who had trained for years. Spectators watched in breathless silence as he approached the brink of Horseshoe Falls, the largest of Niagara's cascades, where millions of gallons of water plunged 167 feet. For a moment, the kayak teetered on the edge, and time seemed to freeze. Then it vanished over the precipice, swallowed by the thundering water. The crowd rushed to the edge, their eyes scanning the mist-filled basin below. God alone knew what would come next. Seconds passed like hours. Finally, the kayak appeared, battered and spinning in the churning water. But there was no sign of Jesse. Rescue teams searched for hours, combing the riverbanks and scouring the whirlpools. Days turned into weeks, and still no trace of Jesse Sharp was ever found. It was as if the falls had claimed him entirely, leaving only the shattered remnants of his kayak as evidence of his daring attempt. Theories abound as to what happened in those final moments. Some say the force of the water must have thrown him from the kayak and into the jagged rocks below. Others speculate that the turbulence of the falls sucked him into a hidden underwater cavern, a watery tomb from which there was no escape. Jesse Sharp's death sent shockwaves through the world of stunt performers and thrill seekers. Jesse's dream of fame came true in a way. His name is etched in the lore of the falls, but not as the triumphant daredevil he envisioned. To this day, his body has never been recovered, making his story one of the most haunting and mysterious tragedies in the history of the falls. But this is Niagara. There will always be another adventurous and reckless person who will get drawn to it. Next, a woman whose courageous plunge turned into a haunting tragedy that echoes through history. Number 3, Maude Willard. For Maude Willard, a young woman brimming with love and dreams, it was a place that would mark the end of her story in the most devastating way imaginable. Maude was the devoted fiancée of William Red Hill Sr., a riverman who had spent much of his life navigating the treacherous waters of the Niagara River. Hill was no stranger to the dangers of the falls, having rescued many and recovered bodies from its unforgiving currents. Yet, despite his experience, he was captivated by the daredevil stunts that drew thrill seekers to Niagara. The couple had spent countless hours talking about adventure, risk, and the lure of the falls. They weren't alone in their fascination. The early 1900s had seen a surge in stunts involving barrels and other contraptions designed to survive the plunge. Inspired by the success of Annie Edson Taylor, the first person to survive a trip over the falls in a barrel just months earlier, Maude and Hill began planning a similar stunt, not for fame, but to prove their love and courage to the world. Their plan was simple but perilous. Maude would accompany a man named William Kendall, an experienced riverman and barrel designer, in a specially constructed barrel over the Horseshoe Falls. The contraption was made of heavy wood reinforced with iron and designed to withstand the tremendous impact. Inside, the pair would be packed tightly with cushioning, and air holes would allow them to breathe. The mist from Niagara Falls shrouded the riverbank in a ghostly veil on that cold day in September 1901. A harrowing warning of the tragedy to come. On the morning of the attempt, the air was thick with anticipation. A small crowd gathered along the riverbank as the barrel was launched into the current. Maude, dressed in a simple outfit, climbed into the narrow opening with Kendall. She was nervous but determined, her gaze steady as Hill offered a final reassuring smile. The barrel bobbed in the rapids, carried by the river's unrelenting pull. As the barrel neared the edge of the Horseshoe Falls, spectators held their breath. The roar of the water drowned out all sound as the barrel disappeared over the precipice, swallowed by the raging torrent. Seconds passed like hours as everyone strained to see where it would resurface. Then the barrel emerged from the mist, spinning wildly in the churning waters below, Cheers erupted from the crowd. They had survived. But something was wrong. The barrel wasn't moving toward the shore. It was caught in a deadly whirlpool near the base of the falls. Hill and other rescuers rushed to the scene, launching boats and ropes to retrieve the barrel. After several tense minutes, they managed to pull it to shore. The crowd pressed closer as the barrel was opened, expecting to see Maude and Kendall, alive and triumphant. It was a horrifying sight that greeted them instead. Kendall was alive, gasping for air and dazed from the ordeal, but Maude was motionless. She had suffocated during the plunge. Her airway blocked when the cushioning inside shifted and pressed against her face. Her death was as sudden as it was tragic, and the dream of a triumphant love story turned into a nightmare. The tragedy of Maude Willard is a chilling reminder of the unforgiving nature of Niagara Falls. Maude's story, often overshadowed by other daredevils and their feats, stands as one of the most poignant losses in Niagara's history. A tale of love, courage, and the ultimate cost of defying the depths of the unknown. Now let's see what happens when a daring stunt to entertain goes fatally wrong. Number 4. James Scott. On the crisp afternoon of July 25th, 1878, James Scott, a young, spirited daredevil with a flair for theatrics, stood at the edge of Niagara Falls, ready to astonish onlookers. A seasoned riverman, Scott often sought to thrill crowds with his feats of daring near the mighty falls. But on this fateful day, his ambition would lead him into a confrontation with nature's most powerful force, a challenge that would claim his life in one of Niagara's most tragic incidents. The plan seemed simple, but danger loomed in every detail. Scott's stunt involved a small, hastily constructed boat and the deceptively calm waters above the rapids. He planned to launch his vessel just far enough upstream to thrill the crowd with his navigation skills while carefully avoiding the treacherous pull of the current. As the crowd gathered, Scott waved confidently, his charisma masking the risk that lay ahead. The boat entered the water, and suspense rippled through the crowd. At first, Scott's plan seemed to unfold perfectly. He paddled his boat with ease, expertly guiding it through the first stretch of choppy waters. The spectators cheered, marvelling at his skill and bravery. But as he ventured farther, the current began to strengthen, pulling the small boat with increasing force toward the brink of the Horseshoe Falls. Then the worst-case scenario became a horrifying reality. Scott's confident strokes turned frantic as he realised the current was far more powerful than he had anticipated. The crowd fell silent as the young man struggled against the river's relentless pull. His small boat, overwhelmed by the rushing water, flipped suddenly, throwing him into the rapids. The sheer power of the water battered him as he tried to swim to safety, but the river was merciless. Onlookers watched in helpless horror as the current dragged him closer to the edge. With one final surge, the river swallowed him whole, plunging him over the 167-foot drop of the Horseshoe Falls. The aftermath left the crowd in stunned silence. Search parties scoured the lower river for days, but James Scott's body was never recovered. His death became a grim reminder of Niagara's raw and unforgiving power, a force that no amount of courage or skill could overcome. He certainly wasn't the only one who took such an unnecessary risk. Next is the case of a renowned swimmer who challenged death. Number 5. Matthew Webb. In July 1883, Matthew Webb, famed for being the first man to swim the English Channel, sought his next great challenge, navigating the raging currents of Niagara's Whirlpool rapids. Webb was a man of unmatched skill and daring. He believed his strength and experience could conquer what no one had ever survived. But Niagara is no ordinary test of endurance. It's nature's ultimate proving ground. So what happens when even the strongest swimmer faces the unstoppable force of Niagara's deadly whirlpool? As Webb entered the water, the crowd held its breath. Hundreds gathered on the riverbanks, watching as the celebrated swimmer dove into the churning waters just below the falls. The rapids were violent, a chaotic torrent of foam and debris, but Webb pressed forward, cutting through the waves with determination. For a moment it seemed as if he might succeed, defying the river's fury. Then the rapids revealed their true power. Webb was drawn into the deadly whirlpool, a swirling vortex notorious for trapping anything caught in its grasp. The crowd's cheers turned to gasps as the swimmer disappeared beneath the surface. Seconds passed, then minutes. Webb was nowhere to be seen. The aftermath left nothing but sorrow. Days later, Webb's lifeless body was found downstream, battered and broken by the rapids he had dared to challenge. His tragic death sent shockwaves across the world, a sobering reminder that even the strongest cannot always triumph over nature. Matthew Webb's legacy is both inspiring and haunting. He was a man of courage and ambition, but his fatal attempt to defy Niagara stands as one of history's greatest cautionary tales, a testament to the unyielding power of the river and the peril of underestimating its wrath. Seen enough of its wrath. How about this next tale of the boy who fell to the unforgiving rapids of Niagara Falls? Number 6. Roger Woodward. It was July 9th, 1960, a summer day that began like any other for 7-year-old Roger Woodward. He and his sister Deanne had been invited on a boat ride with family friend James Honeycutt, an experienced boater. Their small aluminum motorboat bobbed along the Niagara River, just above the mighty falls, as the three laughed and soaked in the sun. But beneath the surface, danger lurked. A faulty motor and a fast-approaching current would soon turn their idyllic outing into a nightmare. As the motor sputtered and died, the boat drifted perilously closer to the edge. Honeycutt fought desperately to restart the engine, but the river had already seized control. The rapids tossed the boat like a toy, dragging it inexorably toward the roaring abyss. Deanne clung to her brother, the sheer terror etched on her young face. Honeycutt, unable to save himself or the children, shouted for them to hold on tight as the boat capsized. The current was unstoppable, pulling them into the jaws of the falls. Deanne, wearing a life jacket, was swept toward the edge, but fate intervened. She was rescued just in time by onlookers on the shore. Honeycutt and Roger, however, were carried relentlessly onward, the mist and roar of Horseshoe Falls consuming them. Onlookers watched in horror as Roger, clad in an orange life jacket, was swallowed by the 167-foot drop. For minutes, the mist obscured the boy's fate, leaving the crowd in agonizing suspense. Then, as if by a miracle, Roger surfaced in the turbulent waters below. Battered but alive, he floated among the churning waves, his tiny life jacket keeping him buoyant. Rescuers on the Maid of the Mist ferry sprang into action, risking their own lives to pull the boy from the water. Roger's survival was nothing short of a miracle, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. But the story was far from over. Honeycutt was still missing. As search crews combed the river for any sign of the family friend, Roger was rushed to the hospital. Despite their best efforts, Honeycutt's body was recovered days later. His selflessness and bravery in trying to save the children became a poignant counterpoint to Roger's survival, a reminder of the sacrifices made in the shadow of Niagara's power. Roger Woodward's fall into Niagara Falls is a story etched in history, not for its tragedy alone, but for the astonishing resilience of a child who defied the odds. It's a story that leaves us asking, how do we confront the forces of nature, and at what cost do we dare to test their limits? To help you ponder on that, let's examine the story of the man who dared Niagara twice. Number 7. Kirk Jones. The swirling mist of Niagara Falls has drawn countless dreamers, thrill-seekers and daredevils to its edge. But for Kirk Jones, the Falls was not just a spectacle, it was a test. His name would forever be entwined with the roaring waters, not once but twice. It was October 20th, 2003, when 40-year-old Kirk Jones first faced the fury of Niagara Falls. As a Michigan native, Kirk had been grappling with personal struggles, a sense of purpose slipping away from him. Some say he was looking for a way to feel alive. Others claim he wanted to test the limits of human resilience. Whatever his motivation, Kirk made a choice that would change his life forever. He would go over the Horseshoe Falls without a barrel, a life vest, or any protective equipment. Early that afternoon, Kirk stood on the Canadian side of the river, staring at the churning waters. He was calm, eerily so witnesses would later recall. Without fanfare, he climbed the railing near Table Rock, waded into the freezing current, and let the river take him. The current pulled Kirk swiftly toward the edge. Onlookers gasped as they realised what was happening. The thundering cascade swallowed him whole, dragging him 167 feet down into the misty abyss. Silence fell over the crowd as they braced for the inevitable. No one had ever survived such a feat without a protective device. But then, against all odds, Kirk surfaced. The crowd erupted as he swam to the shore, battered but alive. Authorities were stunned. Kirk became the first person in recorded history to survive an unprotected plunge over Horseshoe Falls. He was rushed to the hospital, treated for minor injuries, and promptly arrested for performing an illegal stunt. His feat made headlines worldwide. Kirk's miraculous survival turned him into an instant celebrity, but fame proved fleeting. In the years that followed, Kirk struggled to capitalise on his improbable story. He gave interviews, wrote about his experience, and even appeared in documentaries. But the fame he sought never materialised. As time passed, Kirk became disillusioned. The thrill of his survival faded, replaced by an unshakable pull to return to the falls. By 2017, Kirk's life had taken another dark turn. Financial troubles and personal hardships weighed heavily on him. The man who had once stared death in the face decided to tempt fate once more, but this time the stakes were higher. Kirk planned to go over the falls again. This time he would not go alone. He constructed an inflatable ball and an oversized Zorb designed to protect him from the crushing impact. It was crude and ill-equipped for the violent force of the water, but Kirk believed it was enough. This time he reportedly brought his beloved dog with him, adding a heartbreaking layer to his final stunt. On April 19th, 2017, Kirk and the inflatable ball were spotted near the Niagara River. Witnesses saw the ball floating toward the falls, and once again the crowd held its breath. The ball disappeared into the thunderous cascade, swallowed by the mist and chaos. Hours later, the ball was found downstream, empty. Days of searching revealed the grim truth. Kirk had been thrown from the ball before or during the plunge. On June 2nd, his body was recovered near the Niagara River, ending the story of a man who had dared the falls twice, but succumbed to its unrelenting power. The dog miraculously survived and was found on shore. Kirk Jones's story highlights the actions of a tortured soul, chasing meaning and redemption in the face of insurmountable odds. His life and death now serve as a stark reminder of the unforgiving force of Niagara Falls, a place where dreams and despair collide, often with devastating consequences. For all its beauty and allure, Niagara Falls remains a force of nature that cares nothing for human ambition, love, or bravery.